Hey folks, wanted to welcome everyone to the Agile at Scale meetup for February 16th, 2024. This is, of course, sponsored by Agile Austin. Mission being to connect people and foster professional growth through collaborative events such as this one. We love engaging with our community in Austin, and of course, we have participants now throughout the country and even the globe. So, always looking to help enhance and enrich everyone's knowledge of Agile and related topics. Um, so the board for this year, our term is coming to a conclusion. I'm the CTO of Agile Austin. We also have Max Casey, the president, who is typically on these calls. So Max can turn his camera on if he actually made it today, and if not, not. You can see the rest of our board members there. We will definitely have at least two vacancies coming up. Our Chief Financial Officer, Scott Killen, who is one of the co-founders of the organization, is retiring from the Agile Austin and the nonprofit space that he started. So we thank him for all his efforts. But in the next few months, when we have elections, we will definitely be looking to have Chief Financial Officer. So if you're interested in joining, reach out. Also, our Chief Product Officer, Angela, will not be continuing with the organization, so we'll have an opening there as well. And of course, the elections, we'd love to have competitive ones. So please reach out if you're interested in joining the board at agileaustin.org. And so we wanted to thank our sponsors for the organization overall. We've got Agile Velocity and Ad Melior Coaching. They both have a lot of really great stuff that they are doing in the community, and especially Agile Velocity. They have a code here that you can use, Agile Austin, for all of their public workshops. So I will link this presentation to the meetup page afterwards if you want the QR code. So don't have to whip your camera out just right now. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor, that's what helps these events stay free. So please reach out to contact@agileaustin.org. We'd love to have you. The other thing that sustains us is our membership. $35 fee has not increased in over a decade. No inflation here for that. So we have a vibrant Slack community as well as special events that happen throughout the year. We also have other meetups that happen. So our Agile coaching, Agile at Scale, book club, Leader Sig, a lot of good things happening throughout the organization. So check those events out on our meetup page. And yes, we have 7,000 members on that meetup page now. I also wanted to plug the fact that we have the Keep Austin Agile conference coming up on March 7th, 2024 at the UT Commons Conference Center. So we have two options. We have an in-person option as well as a virtual option. So please, please check out our website, agileaustin.org, for information, more information on the conference and to purchase your ticket. We'd love to see you there in person or virtually. Got a fantastic set of speakers lined up that are on the website. We've also got plenty of social media posts that we've made and will be making in terms of more things about the content. So I will post some links in the chat here in a moment for some of our sponsors. I believe we have some additional ones now. It's like it's probably outdated at this point, but going to be a great conference. So back to this city. So Agile at Scale meetup, Leland started this now, I guess it was 8 years ago. So congratulations on 8 years, Leland. And I joined in 2020, and we've been having lots of great speakers since. And so, in terms of what we've got coming up, collaboration at scale with Joanna Rothman next month. And then we're actually open in April and May. So if you're interested, we've got our email address each of our email addresses at the end of this slide. You can reach out to us if you are interested in speaking at an upcoming SIG. And since we have some openings, it'd be great to hear from some folks. But for today, we are going to be hearing about the topic taking Agile to the next level fast with fluid scaling technology. So Quinton will be walking us through that topic. Really looking forward to it. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and hand things over to Quinton here to take us away. So Quinton, take us away.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Okay, let's start with looking at puppies. Everyone can see puppies? That's my presentation. Oh, let's try this. All right, now, you can see a PowerPoint slide. Yes. All right. Very exciting one. Taking Agile to the next level, fast with fluid scaling technology, and Quinton Quartel. Oh, this was the original slide deck cover. So I'm going to start with a story, and then we're going to talk about what fluid scaling technology is, why it works, and then how to run your own experiment. So I'm Quinton Quartel. I'm a dev, an Agilist since 2002, and a consultant and founder of fluid scaling technology. I like to start with the weak points to get that out of the way, and so you don't get caught up if you hear something and like, yeah, but. So yes, it is the early days for FaST, and FaST isn't backed by a whole bunch of money. This is something I'm bootstrapping, and consequently, the support materials are still kind of in their infancy. And one thing we do know is can be unappealing to very linear, orange, traditionally minded organizations. So they're the weak points we know about. You don't need to tell me about them. Let's start with the name FAST. It is an acronym for Fluid Scaling Technology. So the joke is the A is silent. So it's often called FAST or Fast Agile as well. So the tale of fluid scaling technology, let's go into the story, which is really the origin story of FAST. So there's 4 parts of the story, and I usually do audience participation. Let's see if this works. So when you see the happy symbol, you go, ah. When you see the sad symbol, you go, ah. And when you see the joyous symbol, you go, yay. Okay, so this keeps us awake. Maybe we won't get, oh, there we go.
Ah,
Oh,
yay.
thank you, Josh. And that's a joke. All right. So tuck in kitties, because Uncle Quinton will tell you a story. It starts in 2002 in the far south of England, where a dev falls in love. Oh, all right. I'll play the audience too. So this dev, myself, discovers extreme programming and self-organization. So I would turn up to work, and we would stand in a semicircle around a board, and have this huddle meeting where we would self-organize. Hey, what should we do? What should we do today? And by the end of that meeting, we will have broken out into pairs and gone and start doing some work. So that was the kind of Agile that I fell in love with back then in 2002. Oh, sorry, thank you. So the Agile I fell in love with was, it's heavily based in self-organization, small releases, resilient to team changes. It was social, fun, and very much based on clean code and mastery. So to me, that's what Agile was for a long time. Well, let's fast forward to 2007, chapter 2. Well, there's a broken heart there. Oh, Quinton. So what broke my heart was zombie corporate Agile. Kind of made me sad. So yay Agile was with the things that we spoke about, but not yay Agile was none of those, which I was seeing a lot So this image here of Agile Corporate Agile, this is something I found on the web. I don't know who to attribute it to. I'm still trying to find that here, who did that. Then if the other thing that was making me sad was Agile at scale. Like it seemed like we were kind of scaling the wrong things. And again, that image there of the beetle bugs upside down, that's from the same image. So I can kind of relate to that. So we went from yay Agile to not so yay Agile. Oh, Mr. Quinton's got his heart broken. But it's not all bad news, because come 2014, at an Agile conference, this consultant has a eureka moment. So it's in New Orleans, 2014, at an Agile conference. It's a 3-day conference, and the third day of the conference is an open space event. Anyone not familiar with open space, this is the book that describes the whole process, Open Space Technology, a User Guide by Harrison Owen. That's a picture of Harrison Owen. So I take this quick side tour to describe what open space is, because it's very important to understanding how FaST works. So open space is something created by Harrison Owen, this gentleman here, and he used to be responsible for conferences back in the 80s. And he would set up very traditional format conferences where he'd get speakers and arrange the entire event, and then look at the feedback forms afterwards. And he was getting more and more frustrated every year that the thing that the people liked most about his conferences wasn't all of the hard work that he put in with the sessions. It was actually in the water cooler sessions and in the hallway conversations. And he thought, well, if that's the most valuable thing, why don't we turn this on its head? And why don't we make the conference an entire water cooler session? So he invites everyone the next year and says, hey, I'm not telling you what the agenda is until you get here. I've got a surprise for you. So everyone shows up and he explains his frustration. And he says, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a conference full of these conversations. So anyone that has a conversation, write it on a piece of paper. You can see him standing there in front of a circle. Come to the center of a circle, grab a piece of paper, write your conversation that you want to have on this piece of paper, announce it to the audience here, and then we'll go put it on a wall, and you're going to go have that conversation. So that was the birth of open space technology. It was a huge hit, and it's now used you'll see it used more and more in a lot of conferences. So that's a little sidestep into open space for anyone that's unfamiliar with open space or what an open space conference looks like. So day 3 of this conference, I'm in the open space event. That image to the right there is what the marketplace wall looks like. And we just finished populating the marketplace. There's 800 people at this conference in this open space event, the largest one I've been to. Previous to this, I was very familiar with Agile Open Northwest, and I want to talk about that later too, to try and entice some of you to maybe come along this year. So Agile Open Northwest, something I'm very familiar with. Now I'm in this conference of 800 people, and I have this like aha moment of, hey, this thing is really incredible, and it's so agile. It just feels so agile. The values are so compatible with agile, and wow, it scales, right? Because I've been in 100, and there's 800 people. When do you ever see 800 people self-organize? And I use 2 words in the same sentence that, I never thought I would, agile and scale. I'm like, hey, why aren't we using open space as a way to solve agile at scale? So everything up to this point, me as an agile coach was all around the team level, was Scrum and extreme programming and technical practices. But I thought, wow, what if we used open space? And I immediately jumped up, lost my towel, and facilitated a session on hey, why don't we use open space as a way to solve agile at scale? So that was this eureka moment back in 2014.
Yay.
Yay, Quinton has a eureka moment. Maybe it was related back to to my XP days, and that's why I share that image in the beginning. So over there was the image from extreme programming. Here on the image on the right is what open space looks like. You got this marketplace with everyone in the conference standing in a semicircle around this marketplace wall, and then breaking away into teams. So it's like extreme programming, but at scale. And I think there's a lot of familiarity to extreme programming. So now, yay, I've had an idea. Let's fast forward another 2 years, and we get to actually put this idea into action. So it's 2016. I'm now inside a very traditional organization called Primera Health Insurance Company in Seattle. I'll come back to that one. No, let's go back to this one. So the challenge I'm faced with is it's a scaling challenge. So I'm an Agile coach. We've got one large team, and the plan was that we were going to take on multiple products. So we're now at the point where we're ready to start our second product. So we've got one large team, which we've been adding people to. We're now ready to take on product number 2. What do? There's a standard way of the Scrum solution is to go, well, split into 2 teams. I didn't like, well, there was reasons that I was hesitant to do that. The main one was one product was a legacy product. The second product was new greenfield product, and it was very sexy. So all the developers kind of wanted to be over on this new greenfield product. And I felt that the people that had been at the company the longest were the ones that really deserved to be over on this greenfield product. But if I moved them all over there, then we've lost all the domain knowledge and we've only got the new people there. So there was this challenge around that. And I really wanted, the old timers to be able to have a go at this greenfield stuff, because that ends up on your resume, makes you worth more as a developer, makes your life fun as a developer. So that was the challenge I was faced with, which then came back to the idea that I had, 2 years ago, and said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just create a marketplace of work? So why don't we use something based on open space? We'll create this marketplace of work, and we'll stay together as one team, but we'll break out into teams, but it doesn't matter. I don't care who goes into which team or who does what, as long as everything gets done. Which means that, well, the kind of rule was do the right thing. So if I am domain expert on something in the legacy product, and there's some work that needs to get done in that legacy product, that only I know how that works, well, the right thing for me to do at that point in time is to go and work on that. And even more so, the right thing is to make sure I work with someone else or other people to train them up, so I'm not the only person that knows how to do that. And so now we're sharing the wealth, sharing the knowledge, and getting into collective code ownership. So that was the goal, and I ran it by the team and said, hey, is this something we want to try? Explained the benefits to it, the benefits that could happen. It could happen, like this is an experiment. And we got a unanimous yes. We said, all right, we'll do this for 2 months. If after 2 months this doesn't work, we'll go back to traditional Scrum way of doing things. That's easy. I've done that before. And we can resolve the other issues as they come up. So we never did have to roll back. We never did go back to Scrum. And this was essentially the birth of FaST. So this was when FaST really emerged. That was when we were small. So we're standing there in front of the marketplace board. You can see there's a story map in the background there. And what we found is you can keep adding people into that collective, and it grows. It can grow fluidly, easily. And this is, at its largest, we got to about 50, 60 people. There's probably about 20, 30 in this image here. And this is a picture of what we call the FaST meeting, which is very akin to the open space. That's really where open space comes in. So FaST works small scale and large scale. And as this is about Agile at scale, so I kind of focus on the scaling aspects. FaST doesn't scale Scrum. It doesn't scale by teams. It scales by people. So FaST scales itself. It scales fast. So FaST is in that way, it's kind of fractal. So in closing of my story, Mr. Quinton started with Yay Agile. He was frustrated with zombie Agile and aspects of scaled Agile. And we think that FaST may solve some of those issues. And so Agile gets to live happily ever after, thanks to FaST.
Yay.
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 So that's the story of how FaST was born. So right now you know a little bit about FaST. It's based on open space and it scales. So I'm going to drill into it a bit more, and then I'm going to leave lots of time for questions and answers, because that's where I think it starts to get more interesting. So what is FaST? In 5 sentences, the first 2 here are about our one-time setup. We merge teams together into a collective. We throw the combined work into a wall, which represents a big picture. And then we have a meeting where everyone self-organizes around work. We get some work done. And then on a short cadence, we come back together to synchronize and share progress. That's it. FaST in 5 sentences. Let's go through them again. Number 1, we merge teams together into a collective. So in this scenario here, we've got 3 teams. We're merging them together. They're now one collective. And their combined work, let's throw that onto a wall, and we'll call that the big picture. And so now we're visualizing the work of the collective. Setup complete. Now we've got a collective. Let's have this meeting. So this meeting is steps 3. This meeting is part of what we call the value cycle, which is in steps 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to use this little diagram here to go through it. Let's zoom in on this. So we start the value cycle with the product manager over there. He's got a top hat on. Product manager says, hey, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. Here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. So to kind of kick off every meeting with this inspiring message around purpose and vision. From there, the product manager will say, go. Once the product manager says go, now we enter the open space aspect of the meeting, where people self-organize around work, and we repopulate a marketplace for that upcoming cycle. So Josh says, yeah, I'm really interested in working on feature number 1. I'm going to be over in room A. And then Francesca says, well, I've got some refactoring to do. We left a whole bunch of work behind, and I'm going to be over in room B. And Yormi says, yeah, I've been looking at the code. I think there's an architectural component layer that we need to put in there. I'm going to be over in room C. And I use this example to show that one person here spoke about work that was in the backlog, and we don't really use that word anymore, but the other 2 people, they said, well, there's things that we've discovered and that we want to do, and that's what's going to happen. So I use that as an example of tapping into the collective wisdom of the crowd. So what should we as a collective be doing right now? And then the collective will say, well, this is what we should be doing. And if that's what the collective says, then let's go with that. So in this example, those 3 people, they're called team stewards. They've put their items up. Everyone else in the collective is looking at that board and saying, well, I think I'm going to work with Josh because I've been working with Josh for a while. I want to see that feature done. And that's what happens most of the time, is that a team will form around a piece of work and they stick with it and they just get it done. Someone else might go, well, I'm really looking at getting better at my coding practice. Where did Quinn go to? Quinn went to that team. I'm going to go to that team. Or I might say, I've been working on back-end stuff so long, I really should get better at front end. Oh, that one there looks like it's got some good front end stuff. I'm going to go there. Or I've been working with this team for a long time. I really need to get to know more of the collective. I'm going to go over to that team because there's some people I know. So I've given you different examples of which team, why people pick which team. And most of the time it's scenario one where people continue on with the work item that they go to. So there is fluid teaming, but don't think that it's totally random all the time. It's not like that. Okay, so we've now done this. We go and meet with our teams, and the first thing we do with our teams is say, hey, how are we going to work? So autonomy is a huge part of FaST, which means how are we going to work? Are we going to mob? Are we going to pair? What does our team agreement say? Do we have to pair, or can we work solo? Are we going to work in the office? Are we going to work distributed? Do we want to work at Starbucks? Should we work at my house? Should we work core hours? You get to pick, right? So there's 4 aspects to autonomy according to Daniel Pink: team, task, time, and technique. 4 aspects to autonomy. So I've just given you how you've already picked your team. Now you're going to pick how, you know, your team and your task. Now you're going to pick your technique and also or your time. So we're really enabling autonomy here. So we've worked that out. Here's another thing that might happen is that Josh, when he saw the marketplace go up, he said, Yomi is going to clash with me. And we're going to be working the same code base. You know, before we do anything, let's go and have a discussion. So Josh and his team go and meet with Yomi and his team, and we'll say, hey, we've got an issue here. How are you thinking of doing this? And we'll have an architectural discussion. We'll put stuff on the whiteboard. We'll look at it. We come to agreement. Go, yeah, that's great. So now 2 teams. We've just resolved a dependency. Now the 2 teams can say, well, what do we do with that? There's a whole bunch of things you can do with it. And this is where adults get to be adults. And they might say, well, why don't we merge and we'll mob on it? Yeah. Or, hey, we could split. You take that part, we'll take that part. Sure. Or, you know what? Why don't you peeps run with that, and I'm gonna and my team's gonna go pick something else off the board. You know, so work it out as adults. But this is how dependencies kind of resolve themselves in FaST, just in time. So now these teams go and do some work. They might get some work done in there. If they get it done, then they just push it out and go pick up something else. But this is what happens inside the value cycle. When the value cycle comes to an end, ding, ding, we all come back together. Like we started together, and the purpose for coming back together is to share progress, is to say, hey, since last time we met, this is what my team did. And that communication is just enough for everyone to get an understanding of how did the system change since last time we met. So I'm responsible for letting the rest of the collective know, you know, for what we did here. It could be something like, you know, we started down this path and it turned out to be the total wrong path. So we learned a lot. So that's it. That's all I have to share. Or you might say, yeah, we had to change the date format on log file. We got that done. We don't need to do a demo. This is really a synchronization point to synchronize an understanding. So now we've all synchronized. So now we know the new state of the system. We understand any new learning that has come up. And we say, hey, while we're all gathered here, why don't we kick off the next cycle? Great idea. And so this is where we go back to the product manager, gets up and says, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. you are awesome. So that's, if you remember, that's how the value cycle starts, or how the FaST meeting starts. So the FaST meeting closes one value cycle and opens the other. So there's one meeting in FaST, and that's it. That's the FaST meeting. That's the complete picture. You'll notice over there it says the cadence is 2 days. That's an experiment. The advice is to find the shortest cycle that works. We experimented 2 days. We experimented with a week, and we came back to 2 days. I know of other experiments going on right now, which are 1 day long. I know of 2.5 days. So it's kind of up to the collective to find what works for them. So do I want to do this part? Yeah, let's do this very quickly, and then we'll go into Q&A. So we're going to talk about all of these as to why FaST works. This is just a few of the reasons. No, we're not going to go into all of these. We're going to just drill into one of them, into the fluid aspect of it, and why that kind of really differentiates FaST and why it's important. The fluidity is the perfect coupling for adaptability. And when we talk about fluidity and FaST, we're talking about these 5 aspects to it: that our work is fluid, our structure is fluid, we have fluid leadership, fluid roles, and that the scaling itself is fluid, that we can move bidirectionally. So we can descale and scale as well. I'm going to, so fluid work, I might skip through this and show you a video instead. Let's see if this works. Yeah, this is James Shaw. He's going to be at Agile Open Northwest, which I'm going to talk about a little in a moment. And James is known for this book here, The Art of Agile Development. James also known for, he's quite keen on FaST, and he's got some data he's done on some FaST experiments he's been a part of. So I'm going to show a video. Let's see if this works. It's always interesting. I'm not going to show the complete video, but just a portion, hopefully. And do you have any audio?
Your audio.
I am not even hearing any audio. Let's see if I can pause this.
No audio right now.
And
taken all the names out so that you can see.
Do you get that?
Yep,
Yes,
a little
getting
bit
audio.
higher on the volume.
How that actually worked. So what you're going to see here is that each vertical column represents a related stream of work, typically for a single valuable increment. So these two together were one valuable increment. They eventually collapsed that down to just one team working on it. They never got to the point while I was there where they could have multiple teams working on the same valuable increment, which is more about their engineering capability than FaST, I think. But this is another valuable increment. This is a valuable increment, and so forth. The new icon means that the work on that valuable increment has started. The checkbox means that the work has been completed and delivered to the point that value is now being received from doing it. You'll see a few that were just abandoned, typically because they started working on it, realized it wasn't a good idea, and stopped working on it. More often, you'll see things that got blocked, and then there'll be a little exclamation mark saying, this is in progress, but nobody's working on it because it's still blocked. And when it's resumed, you'll see a thumbs up sign. So what I want you to notice here is that the first couple of weeks were chaotic. There was a lot of movement as people figured out which team they wanted to work on, who they wanted to work with, what the technologies were. Because remember, prior to introducing FaST, people had worked very much in silos. Each person had their area of expertise. They didn't really know anything about the other products in the company. But when we introduced FaST, we cut down the work in progress dramatically. Even though I would have preferred it to be smaller, we still went from dozens of things in progress to just no more than 8. And often it was closer to 5 or 6 valuable increments in progress. And we also focused the valuable increments so that they were much smaller. So now people had to work on things that were unfamiliar to them. And you see a lot of switching as a result. But then in the beginning, we did literally every 2 days, and then fairly quickly we went to 2 days a week. So after a couple of weeks, what you're going to see here is that people settled into their teams and they started switching really only because they were no longer needed on a team. Something got blocked or the work was finished. And for the most part, people would stay on their teams. What I also want you to notice is that they started delivering quite frequently. This was an organization that was only able to deliver every 2 or 3 months. And now they're delivering typically every week, often multiple times per week. Another thing that's interesting, now I do have more history, but it actually takes a lot of time for me to put this graph together. So this is where I stop. And I don't know what happened here, but one thing I find interesting is that this team stayed together, they finished something, and then they all sort of went en masse all together into a new valuable increment, which I find really interesting. There was somebody else who came into it, but most of them stayed together. Now, these lines of people moving around, this represents intentional switching. There were also people going on holiday, joining the ops team, being on call for ops, which means you didn't have to be on a team. And I haven't shown those lines because that's a little more confusing. But for the most part, what you can see here is that teams tended to stay together. So overall, the thing that people are worried about with FaST is that because we have the opportunity to switch every couple of days, people are going to switch every couple of days. Turns out not to be true. We did see that in the beginning, but over time, the switching was genuinely because there was a need for it, not because people were arbitrarily switching teams. To sort of bring it all together, I would say that FaST worked really well, despite this was kind of being a worst case scenario for FaST. As I mentioned, there was a lot of siloed.
Right, I'm going to leave it there. Oh, I'm not going to show the whole video. But the highlights there is, you know, they went from 2 to 3 months delivery down to multiple times per week. And I like showing that video because it's a visual of how and when and why teams move change. And he experienced the same thing we did, that it doesn't actually change that often just because it can. The other highlight there is the resilience of people being able to go away on vacation and pop back in. That's something that you'll see in mob programming, and I think FaST really shows that same kind of resilience. So
There's a lot of unrelated problems.
no. No. Okay. I think we're gonna. Oh yeah, I like this image here. It comes from General McChrystal. He calls this the team of teams approach. So he's going from a command to a command of teams to team of teams. And I think this command of teams kind of represents where we got to with Agile at scale. Like as soon as you're scaling static teams, you end up with this challenge. So the challenges of Agile at scale are always dependency management. How do we and how do we how many teams do we have, and how do we divide the work? And if you come up with you come up with that ideal team topology, it's only ideal for until it isn't. Because as we discover new things or as things change, maybe our topology should be able to change as well. So this is where we get into a fluid dynamic structure, which FaST supports. So dynamic teaming creates this dynamic network structure. The other thing we said is fluid is leadership. So when Josh says, hey, I would like to lead a team, Josh is showing natural leadership. So within the collective, anyone has the ability to be a leader. And so that's kind of the summary of how fluidity works inside FaST, which results in something that looks like this: a complex adaptive system based on simple rules that can emerge and adapt to anything that's happening there. Anything that's happening here is a predator, which is attacking these birds, and they can just morph and shape and protect themselves. So with that, I think I will leave the deck here. There's more to it, but I think this is a good pause point. Before we go into questions and answers, I wanted to mention that if you are interested in attending an open space event, I mentioned Agile Open Northwest. There is one coming up in Portland, Oregon. Highly recommend it. It's the kind of longest running Agile conference, open space conference in the United States. It's the 20th to the 22nd of March. And if you're going to that, I'm going to be there. And if you're going to that, if you wanted to come 2 days earlier, the 19th and the 20th, Nazi's here. Hi, Nazi. Nazi's going to be there. Looking forward to seeing you, Nazi. The 19th and the 20th, which is the Monday and the Tuesday. So Agile Open Northwest is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Nazi can attest to how awesome this conference is. The 2 days before that, I'm actually running a class on fluid scaling technology. So it's a 2-day class, and you'll come out with the FAN certificate for the class. So I have a discount code for anyone today. I'll post that in the chat later, and the details of that. But I wanted to mention that now before I forget, and we go to Q&A.
Well, thanks, Quinton. Great presentation. And yeah, we got a ton of questions in the chat. So let's kick this off with the first one chronologically from Ram. What is your product, or how did you define the product?
That's a really good question. So if you remember, the initial challenge that we had at Primera was we had 2 products and 1 team. So when you hear me talk about FaST, when I describe it, it sounds very much like 1 product, 1 collective, and I think that's probably the best fit. But it can support a collective can support multiple products. So the 2 products that we started with were fairly unrelated to, and I'm not at I'm not able to talk about those products specifically, but they were very different products, and we actually ended up with 2 collectives. One of the collectives was dedicated to one.
Let me go back one step, Quinton.
Yeah.
How do you actually define your product? Because how your customers see your product need not be how you as an organization see the product.
Yeah.
So do they have a common code base? Were they actually having shared data, shared services, operating the same platform?
Yeah. No. So we had in the collective we had 3 products. They were all.
Why do you call them 3 products? That's my question. Why do you call them 3 products? Why not 1 product?
That's a good question. Because they could be deployed independently, and they delivered very different functionality for very different reasons. Okay. For example, one of them was a purely back-end service, so we were migrating to the cloud. So there was a whole so the consumers of that product were all internal, versus some of the other products which were very external facing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, very good. So Francisco asked, how long is the cycle usually?
Yeah, and so I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. Is the first thing with the cycle is that meeting, it's quite often gets confused. Well, people get caught up in Scrum and they think a cycle equals a sprint, but it's not. So the meeting, the FaST meeting, is closer in Scrum to the Scrum meeting or the stand-up meeting than any of the closing events. So I mentioned 2 days. James Shaw mentioned 2 days as well. I think because we started with 2 days, most people kind of start there. So the advice is to find something as short as possible. And it really is to say, well, the purpose of meeting back together is to synchronize. So what makes sense for us, given the pace of what we're doing, for us to synchronize. And that's for you to discover as a collective. And I would just try a few things out and see what works. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I hope so
Yes.
too. Francisco, did you want to say something?
But I will just say thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, great. So Rodrigo had the next question. Are all the team members devs, or does it also include QA, DevOps, etc.?
That's a really good question. So ideally, so the collective needs to be cross-functional. And I think that's one of the strengths of FAST is that it makes it a lot easier to share on skills that are restricted. So for instance, let's say we need design. So in Scrum, if a team needs design, you're supposed to have a designer in the team. But if that designer doesn't need to be, isn't fully engaged on 100% of the time, they could be doing design for another team as well. So in FAST, having, we can put a designer into the FAST collective, and we can determine, hey, do we need another designer now? We're at 60 people. So it really lets you determine how to best make use of limited resources.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Rodrigo?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Ram also asked, how does product backlog refinement happen as well as retrospectives?
That's a really good question. So there's two questions in there. Nicely done, Rodrigo. You're doing up. So let's start with let's do retrospective. That's probably the easier one. So what is a retrospective and why do you do a retrospective? And that's really for the purpose of improving the system. So in Scrum, they said, all right, for us to improve the system, you have to have a retrospective meeting. And I'm going to say there are other ways of improving the system other than retrospectives. So in FAST, there is no one way that we do it, other than, so there's framework aspects to FAST, and part of the framework is find out a way to improve the system. And so the collective needs to experiment and find out what works for it for improving the system. Now, if you think about a retrospective, if we have 30 people in the collective, you could probably still have a retrospective, but when you get to 60, retrospective meeting is not ideal, a way of addressing that at all. So you're going to find out some other things to do. I can give you some stories of what we did at Primera. We had Woody Zool in for some, as an aside, we had Woody Zool in for some training on mob programming. He told us about this thing that they were doing at Hunter called Turn Up the Good. So we introduced Turn Up the Good into the FAST meeting. We had a FAST guild. So anyone that was really passionate about, changing the way that we work or making improvements, we said, come to the FAST guild, present at the guild. If the guild likes it, if it gets approved at the guild, then we get it approved by the collective, and then we run that as an experiment for 2 months. So we had the guild there as well. We did research time. Well, actually, that kind of gets more into personal improvement and mastery. But towards the end, we said, hey, why don't we try an open space event with the theme of reflect and improve? And I think I would do that particular activity again, given the chance. So there's no one way of doing it other than the directive of find ways to do it. That's the how we reflect and improve. Breaking down work happens just in time. So if and I give an example of let's say we were at the FAST meeting, and the product manager said, hey, we've got this new feature and Microsoft want us to add this feature. If we add this feature, they're going to use our product. This feature is blah, 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 blah. I'm going to give you 2 sentences. And now any questions, quickly answer some questions. So now the collective knows about this much about it, this new feature. When we say go, Josh says, I'm going to work on that feature. I'm going to be over in room number 2. Josh shows up in room number 2 with 3 other people. What are you going to do? There might be 80 days worth of work in that. And you're in a 2-day cycle, 3 other people. All you know is about 3 sentences. So what do? You start asking questions. We'll talk to Microsoft. We'll read the documentation. And as we start understanding it, we start breaking down work. And we break it down just enough, just in time for us to have something that we can actually work on. And we go, great, now we've got something we can work on. We've got all of the understanding that we keep, and we use this thing called a discovery tree for representing that. And so we do that just enough, just in time. As we get through work, we get to the point where, we're going to need to break down some more. So we communicate back with the product manager or stakeholders or the customers to start breaking down more work. And by doing it just enough, just in time, that enables us for change. So the fluidity of work. As Woody Zool says, as we do the work, we don't really understand the work until we start doing it. So this is why we break it down just enough and just in time. Does that answer your 2 questions?
Not really, but I will kind of continue. I'll let you move on to the next questions, because when you say like a retrospective, there's like context attached to it. If you take, for example, Scrum, the team is together, so the action items you generate is valuable immediately in the next sprint. And when I've seen teams skipping a lot of times retrospectives, so when people kind of say, hey, we don't run retrospectives, that's a kind of common thing that I actually see, a lot of dysfunction. And when explicitly retrospective is not mentioned, then there's more opportunities for people to skip it. The second element of product backlog, the second question was like product backlog refinement. And it's not just about breaking down work, but it's actually more also around discovery of work, what needs to be built, discovering that, working with the customer, finding
yes,
that.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's kind of quite a bit of thing in
yes.
product backlog refinement than just breaking down larger product backlog items into smaller product backlog items, or writing user stories, or doing a story map.
Totally agree with you. And we can get into product discovery as well. So the example I gave you was very much, I can understand why you'd say that. But yeah, in the limited time we had, that was the example I gave. But yes, I think this is the one thing that I love about FaST Collective is that it can move between product discovery and delivery. Both things can be happening in the collective at the same time. And so it really does support this idea of like modern product management. Because you can only break down, in the example I gave you, you can only break down certain types of work once the kind of discovery part has been done.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Let's got a ton of other questions, so let's move on. Damon, who's joining us from Australia, he has a question. So it's a long-standing assertion and a belief that long-surviving teams should be a thing, which I believe has good logic behind it to a point. What do you see happening in a FaST context in relation to this?
This is a great book by Heidi Helfman called Dynamic Reteaming. And I think that is, I think a lot of things that we believe in the Agile world aren't actually haven't been tested and really fall into the space of communal reinforcement. I think that's one of them. I'm going to give you an example of, if I go to a hackathon, I'm a dev, I show up at a hackathon, let's hack Austin hackathon. And I turn up to this hall. There's a whole bunch of people I've never met. And at the front of the hall, a bunch of people say, hey, I've got this project, I've got this one. I'm looking at those projects. I'm going to go to that one. I turn up, there's a bunch of people I've never met before. And guess what? In 2 days, we actually turn out something that works. I have a lot of fun and I've got to know these people. So can teams function that haven't met before? Absolutely. Otherwise, hackathons would never work. So, and FaST is kind of this like continuous hackathon in that way. And if you remember, I mentioned autonomy, and the importance of autonomy is the ability to pick your own team. So the ability to pick your own team means that you're much more likely to be more productive by being able to pick the people that you choose, the people that you get to work with, rather than being forced into a group. And I say not a group and not a team, because a group is not a team until it goes through various kind of phases and stages. You can bypass a lot of that by going through team self-selection. And if you can do a Google search for, Doc Norton did a paper on, who was it did the storming, norming, performing? That is the name of that group model. Anyway, he did a paper on why that whole thing was wrong, because that's usually the supporting reasons for why group teams need to stick together. And yeah, that's been since proven to be false.
Okay.
Hi, Quinton. Thanks for that. The question was more around what do you actually see happening? So not so much like a justification for or against, but just what have you observed?
Oh,
like
okay.
Out?
Yeah. Hey, Damon. I'm an Aussie myself, so it's nice to hear the Aussie accent. Yeah, what actually, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. So what you actually observe is cliques. You see a lot of cliques forming. So once people can self-select, you get these little cliques that form, and people will pick a team. They find the team they like, and they stay together. So they do actually stay together, and that's a natural function of people that what's it called? There's an actual cognitive bias where, anyway, cognitive biases, subconscious cognitive biases will kick in, and that's why a lot of these cliques will form, because of these biases. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a bit of both, turns out, right? If you are in delivery mode, having cliques is just fine. If you're in discovery mode where you need to do a lot of innovation, then that's when it's time to break those cliques up, and you can force people together, and you can do that randomly. So at various times in the phase of the product or the organization, we go, hey, we're going to do an innovation week. This is your team for this next week. And so you can force people together. That creates friction, and that friction is healthy for innovation. And you get people of different cognitive diversity forced together. That's where innovation starts. But if you don't, then you get the birds of a feather flocking together, and you get some. That's what I observed, and I've heard that from other teams, collectives as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Hey, Quinton, are you okay to stay a few minutes after? We do have additional questions in the chat. And
let me just check.
okay.
There is something I might need to run to. Bear with me one moment. Yes, I can stay on longer.
Okay, great. Thanks. So Nazi, I saw you had your hand up. We'll get back to the chat in a moment, but what do you have?
Yeah, first of all, I second what Quinton said regarding Agile Northwest. During COVID, I missed it so much. It's an amazing group, and afterwards, you go to dinner and you make connections, and the most friendly place. And and he was talking about 800 people. This is not 800 people. They are much smaller, and you get intimate interactions, and there are lots of people that they are technical or non-technical, and especially if you haven't gone to any open space, it's an amazing place. And if you have gone, I have gone to different open spaces, it's just amazing compared to the other one. My question is, what's the difference between FaST and Dojo? like Dion does, and
I've never been a part of Dojo, and I can't comment. Sorry.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So let me. So if you're saying your stuff is like 1 or 2 days, does that mean it's kind of like a sprint, but you are doing a 1 or 2 day sprint?
Not like a sprint. No. And that's always the biggest challenge with FaST, is that we're so used to working in sprints. And so, yeah, when I get to that FaST meeting, so if you remember the example I said, Josh says, well, I'm going to pick up this new feature we heard about from Microsoft. I'm going to be over in room 2.
Okay.
And 3 people showed up with Josh. So now I've got 4 people in a 2-day cycle that are looking at something with maybe 80 days worth of work. So they're not trying to get anything done. They're just trying to do continuous doneness. So yeah, whereas sprints are time boxes, there's no time boxes in FaST.
Oh, okay.
There's
So,
no time boxes. Yeah.
so if I have a big feature, the first thing would be for the first 2 days, just talk about it, understand it. The next, the third and fourth day might be talking high level.
You're still thinking 2 days, right? What if it took 20 minutes to talk about it, and then 3.5 days to work on it, right? So those things, they don't fit in. So we don't try and time box it. And that's the FaST meeting is just a synchronization point to say, yeah, we're working through it. This is what we've learned. Here's where we're going. And at the FaST meeting, we goes, yeah, we finished that and we started something else. So it's never, yeah, we're not trying to, it's not a completion point. It's just a synchronization point. Yeah, that's the biggest click when people move to FaST, is to get through that hurdle of thinking it's a 2-day time box. I'm like, not a time box. Yeah.
So Quinton, we also had a question. Is there a risk that from Francisco, a risk that in non-mature organizations, people would form silos, just all UX, all back-end dev, et cetera?
They form cliques, is what we noticed. So if you get a clique of, back-end devs, it's what are they going to do, right? So a lot depends on what comes into the marketplace, and a good product manager is really watching what's going on in the marketplace. Now, if you remember the role of the collective is to decide, we're tapping into the collective wisdom of what should we be doing right now, given what we understand, what should we do right now. So if I was a product manager and I see a bunch of database developers getting together, and they say, oh, we're going to do this thing, we're in room number 2, I'm like, okay, that's what we need to do. Now, if they're doing that 4 cycles in a row, I'm going to start thinking, what is that really what you'd be doing? And this is where we move to. This is why I really love modern product management, where we change our focus to outcome based. And so we're saying, well, what are you doing that for? To what end? How is that? What is that part of? And so this is where the whole, if I see that kind of dysfunction happening inside the collective, I think we're failing as a collective. So the rule of do the right thing means don't hang out with people just because you got the same skill set. That's not the right thing to do.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think Francisco had to drop off, but we also had one more question from him. What if some important but not appealing feature doesn't have anyone working on it?
Who does the shit work? Yeah.
This Yolanda also kind of stretches this question out a little bit with just how prioritization works in general.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was waiting for the, hey, who does the shit work? That's, I call it the shit work question. What you find in self-organizing systems, like self-managed systems, is that is just not, it just doesn't happen. And that once people have responsibility and ownership, they just do things. They just do everything, whether it's good or not so good. So this idea of having to force people to do things that they don't like is a very Taylorist idea that we're trying to move away from in with autonomy and self-management. Scrum introduced the word self-management, but then they never gave you any tools for it. Whereas Agile really, FaST Agile really kind of tries to push you down that path. And yeah, when you get to self-managing system, that's not a question. Well, it never comes up. I hope that answers your question. But I've heard that the similar question asked when I was at Valve, which is a company in Seattle. At one point, that Valve, they do a gaming company, Portal. I think that's probably the most famous game they've created. And they do the Steam platform. That's the other thing they're famous for. There's no managers at Valve, and there is 250 odd people there. And at one point, they were per capita the most profitable company in the United States of America. As in, if you divide how much money they make divided by 250 people, they were the #1 in the United States of America, and there are 0 managers there. So I was doing a tour there, and they got asked that same question. I was very curious to hear what the answer was, and they said the same thing. They said it just doesn't happen in a self-organizing system. So there's 2 parts of that question. That was the one, prioritization. So prioritization is an interesting question because how does it usually happen? With in an orchestrated system, there's someone that will kind of make the decision. So in FaST, the product manager has a lot of that weight on their shoulders, but they're also sharing that weight and responsibility with the collective wisdom of the crowd. So, hey, collective, I think this is what we should be doing right now. What am I not thinking of? And so that's why I gave the example of 2 people coming to that meeting and saying, hey, we're doing things that aren't even in the backlog. And so this is where the product manager is really trusting the wisdom of the crowd to say, the ship date, you know what we need, what's in that release, how far away we are. If you're saying we need to do that, then that's what we need to do. But the product manager at the FaST meeting, when we says this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and by the way, that new feature from Microsoft, that one's really, really important. Can we make sure that someone's on that? Right. So the product manager will influence quite heavily in that direction as and when needed. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Let's just take a couple more questions here, and I think we're leaving a couple on the table, but that's all right. I know. Really appreciate you sticking over time. So, and Yolanda also asks, how do you identify what value is consumable by customers and actual users?
Yeah. Now that is a question that you could ask any. It's got nothing to do with FaST specifically. I mean, that's true of anything. But I'm a big, huge component of modern product management. FaST can work in 2 modes: feature factory mode, which is where you don't ever ask that question, or it can work in more outcome-oriented mode or product-led mode, where that is super important. And this is where I think FaST would really shine, in that everyone within that collective. So I'm a dev, right? That's my background. My entire dev career has been in feature factories. I've never once been asked to participate in a customer interview. Never once. So when I read Marty Kagan's book, I'm like, yes, I'm not an idiot. I'm not just a code monkey. Use me to talk to customers. Please include me. And this is where I'm really hoping, companies that move to FaST start moving in that direction, where we start having the entire collective involved with how do we get closer to the customer? What do the customers really want? What experiments can we run to test our assumptions? That's the real work of agility in my mind. And so that's why my answer there doesn't really, it's generic to any organization. But I think FaST really is designed or can support that work. And that's why I say discovery work and delivery work can happen at the same time and should happen at the same time and be spread. We share that wealth amongst the entire collective.
Hey, great. Thanks for that answer. And let's do this as the final question from Diana. Is there a collective size that works best for FaST? And she also asks, can this really work with smaller teams?
Yeah, so two questions there. So collective size, I know it works up to about 50, and James Shore has had that same experience. I don't know. I think in theory it can work up to Dunbar's number, so 150. I don't know if I don't know. I think people scale for the wrong reasons sometimes. So I'm going to put it this way. I think a collective of 30 people, a FaST collective of 30 people in this fluid dynamic network, if those people were in static teams in using a different process, I think that would take 60 people. And I'm just picking arbitrary numbers here. So I think FaST is in fact like a descaling framework as much as a scaling one. That you try to keep that collective as small as possible. Like don't add people just for the sake of it. And in fact, once you merge all your teams together, you may find that you don't need all that many people in your collective. So in theory, it can go to 150. I know it does work at 60. I think 30 is a really good size for, it depends on the product and what you're trying to do. And if there's multiple products and they're related, then that makes sense too. So that's the size. And can it work small scale? The first example I gave you, when FaST was born, we were 18 people. So I know it works at 18. I think it can work with a lot smaller too. I think it can work with any Scrum size team. So you can replace Scrum with FaST. It can work for a 2-pizza team. Let's pick that number. I'm about to release a paper called Small Scale FaST, which kind of describes that pattern.
Well, thanks, Quinton, for all the answers to the questions, staying over with us. And you said you had a discount code or anything else you wanted?
Oh, I did. Yeah, so I posted, well, let me share. Can I share, or is that gone? Well, no, I don't need to share. Oh, yeah, we go. Here, share screen. So, that one. Yeah, this is the class that I'm running, understanding and implementing FaST with special guest Diana Larson. And not only Diana Larson, James Shaw will be turning up at the class, because James Shaw is based out of Portland, Oregon. So he's going to be in the class and he's going to share what his experiences are. He's been part of 2 FaST experiments. So the video you saw, he'll talk about that one. And he's in an active experiment right now in an organization he's working with. So he'll be sharing that. So that will be part of the class. Woody Zool is going to be attending the class as well. He's a big fan of FaST and wants to dive in deeper. So this is going to be a really exciting class in that you've got some like giant names in the Agile world coming together in this one event, and this will never happen again, by the way. So there's a one-time chance. I do have a discount code for this, which is, let me find that. They are, oh yeah, it is. FaST friend, and it's case sensitive. So I'll put it into the chat. and that will give you a $300 discount. Where's chat? Yeah. It's case sensitive, so that will give you a $300 discount if you can make it. That would be awesome. And please stay for Agile Open Northwest. I mean, now you're talking about a full week of learning and fun and hanging out with. And Nazi can attest to this. The caliber of people that show up to Agile Open Northwest is truly staggering. It's yeah, that's where you get the kind of cutting edge, bleeding edge ideas kind of coming out of the Agile world. So I'll be at the Agile Open Northwest conference as well. So if you come to class, you've got 3 more days to pick my brains and dive in deeper. There will be an online class coming up at some point as well. So if you're interested in that, probably best to, at this point, shoot me an email. No. Yeah, shoot me an email, tell me you're interested in the online class, and I will send that to you as soon as that's ready.
Well, thank you so much, Quinton. Really appreciate everything again for staying over. Great presentation, and yeah, reach out to him and or make use of that coupon code. And this recording will be up on YouTube very soon, or by early next week, and we'll post that back to the meetup page. So everyone take care and have a great weekend, and see you at the next meetup. All right.
Thank
See
you.
you. Okay. Bye-bye.